Every species conquered by the Imperium learned it quickly. Cities burned just enough to make the lesson unforgettable. Leaders were broken publicly, not to kill them, but to show that resistance had a price worse than death. Above it all ruled Empress Vaelith, the Iron Sovereign, an alien monarch whose name alone caused entire systems to surrender without firing a shot. Vaelith was not born cruel. She was forged. Her species, the Drikari, valued dominance as survival. Weak rulers were devoured, sometimes literally by rivals. Vaelith had learned early that mercy was seen as rot. So she ruled through terror because terror worked. It kept the Imperium vast, stable, and obedient. By the time humanity made first contact, the Imperium had already crushed a dozen interstellar coalitions. Humans were inconvenient. They were small, fragile-looking, soft-spoken compared to roaring Drikari warlords. And yet, when the Imperium fleet entered the Sol system, Earth did not surrender immediately. They delayed, negotiated, stalled, studied. Vaelith decided to make an example. She ordered a single human envoy brought to her throne world, not for diplomacy, but demonstration. One human, broken publicly, broadcast across the stars. After that, Earth would kneel. The human chosen was unremarkable by Imperium standards. No armor, no weapons, just a dark uniform and tired eyes. His name was Elias Ward. When Elias was marched into the Obsidian Hall, silence fell. The hall was vast, carved from volcanic stone, lined with banners taken from conquered worlds. At its center rose the throne, organic, jagged, grown rather than built. Vaelith sat upon it, towering, armored in living metal, her eyes glowing like embers behind a veil of shadow. Kneeling was mandatory. Elias did not kneel. The guards slammed the hafts of their weapons against his back. He staggered, but remained standing. A ripple of shock passed through the court. Vaelith lifted one clawed hand, stopping the guards. Slowly, she rose from the throne, her presence pressing down like gravity itself. "Human," she said, her voice amplified by the hall, layered with a subtle psychic edge designed to induce fear. "Do you know who stands before you?" "Yes," Elias replied calmly. "You're the one everyone's afraid of." A murmur swept through the nobles. Fear was expected. Defiance was tolerated only from those powerful enough to survive it. Vaelith descended the steps, each footfall echoing. "Then why?" she asked, leaning close enough that Elias could feel the heat of her breath. "Are you not trembling?" Elias looked up and met her eyes. There was no hatred in his gaze, no arrogance, no bravado, just something Vaelith had not seen in centuries. Understanding. "Because," Elias said quietly, "I recognize that look." Vaelith stiffened. "Explain." "I've seen it on generals who burned cities because they were terrified of losing control. On leaders who punished weakness because they were never allowed to have any. On people who were told their whole lives that fear was the only way to survive." The psychic pressure intensified. The air vibrated. "You dare psychoanalyze me?" Vaelith snarled. "I dare tell the truth," Elias replied. "You don't rule because you love terror. You rule because it's the only language your world taught you." For the first time in centuries, Vaelith hesitated. She struck him. The blow sent Elias skidding across the stone floor. Blood pooled at his lip. The court exhaled, tension breaking into satisfaction. Order restored. "Fear," Vaelith declared, "is what keeps the galaxy alive." Elias coughed, pushed himself up on shaking arms, and laughed softly. "No," he said. "Fear keeps it obedient, not alive." Vaelith turned, eyes blazing. "You will break, human." "Maybe," Elias admitted. But you won't like what you see when you do. What followed were days of interrogation. Vaelith did not delegate it. She came herself, again and again. She probed Elias's memories, Earth's wars, its failures, its cruelty. She showed him worlds she had conquered, species erased. Yet something frustrated her. He still wasn't afraid. He flinched from pain. He feared death like anyone else. But her, the myth, the monster, the Empress, no. He spoke to her like she was a person trapped in a role. Why do you keep coming yourself? Elias asked once, between sessions. Because I must know why you resist, she answered. No, he said gently. Because part of you hopes I'll say something different this time. That night, Vaelith dreamed. She dreamed of her childhood, of kneeling before elders who told her mercy was weakness, of the first rival she killed, not out of hatred, but terror, of the throne that became her cage. She woke furious. The next session, she dragged Elias before the court again. Kneel, she commanded. He didn't. The noble stirred, uneasy now. Kill him, one hissed. Vaelith raised her hand, then stopped. She looked at Elias, really looked at him. Bruised, exhausted, still standing. If I spare you, she asked, what will humanity do? Elias swallowed. They'll remember you didn't have to. The court erupted in outrage. That is weakness. That is chaos. Vaelith silenced them with a roar. She turned back to Elias. And if I let your world go? Then maybe, he said, the galaxy learns a new law. Vaelith stood there a long time. Then she did the unthinkable. She ordered him released. No execution. No torture. No public humiliation. Just release. The Imperium reeled. Worlds whispered. Vassals tested borders. Admirals questioned orders. Fear, once absolute, began to crack. Vaelith addressed the Imperium days later. I ruled through terror, she said, broadcast across 1,000 systems. Because I believed fear was strength. Her gaze hardened. I was wrong. Rebellions flared, but they were not crushed with annihilation. They were answered, negotiated, sometimes forgiven. It was messy, bloody at times. The Imperium shrank but stabilized. And humanity? Earth never joined the Imperium. It became something else. An example. Years later, Elias stood once more in the Obsidian Hall. This time he was invited. Vaelith descended the throne steps, no longer armored, no longer hiding behind psychic dominance. You changed nothing alone, she said. Elias smiled faintly. Neither did you. She met his eyes again and did not look away. Fear had built her empire, but one human had shown her something stronger. And the galaxy would never forget the moment terror blinked first. Ending. Years later, historians would argue about the precise moment the Imperium truly changed. Some claimed it was the broadcast. The day Empress Vaelith admitted fear was not strength. Others pointed to the treaties, the slow dismantling of terror fleets, the end of public executions. But those who had stood in the Obsidian Hall knew better. The change began with a look. Elias stood at the edge of the balcony overlooking the capital city of Carthale. Where once there had been slave banners and warning pylons, there were now lights, markets, transit lanes, voices layered with life instead of silence. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But it was movement. Vaelith joined him, her presence no longer crushing, no longer wrapped in dread. She wore simple ceremonial robes now, a deliberate choice. The galaxy still feared her, but it no longer defined her. You will return to Earth, she said. It was not a question. Yes. Your people will never fully trust me. They shouldn't, Elias replied. Trust takes time.
Choice.
Repetition. Vaelith nodded slowly. Once, I believed mercy would unravel everything I built. And now I see terror was already unraveling it, she said. I was merely holding the threads together with blood. They stood in silence as ships lifted into the sky, civilian vessels, not war cruisers. When you first met my eyes, Vaelith said quietly, I wanted to destroy you. I know. Instead, you reminded me I still had a choice. Elias turned to her. So, does the Imperium? She inclined her head, not as a ruler demanding submission, but as one acknowledging an equal. As Elias departed the throne world, no fleets followed him. No threats echoed across the stars. Only a message, carried on open channels. The age of terror has ended. Those who remain will do so by will, not fear. Across the galaxy, empires trembled, not because they were afraid, but because for the first time they realized fear was no longer inevitable. And somewhere among the stars, humanity was remembered not as conquerors, but as the species that dared to look terror in the eyes and refused to bow.